Thank you so much, everyone, for having me, and good afternoon. It's good morning here in Toronto. As I said, my name is Sharon Flynn. I am a principal of data strategy at Publicis Sapient, based out of Toronto. Um, so really, it's a tremendous pleasure to be here today. I'm actually Irish. This is not what Torontonians sound like. So I have a deep expertise and understanding in and interest in privacy between the two Atlantic borders, between the US and Canada, and then also then within the GDPR and within the UK. So I'm really thrilled to be here today. So what is Public Sapient? Well, Public Sapient is where we sit within the data transformation and digital transformation space. The blurb is that we're a 20,000 company across the world. We're actually quartered in Paris in France. But really what my role is as a data transformation agent is the way I would like to talk about it is, imagine you've unboxed a piece of MarTech, whether it's Adobe, whether it's Google, whether it's a Telium CDP, a Salesforce CDP, and it's sort of sitting there in your organization surrounded by styrofoam peanuts. You're just in that place of how do we activate it? How do we get it going? So my primary objective for you is to how to get those solutions up and running and how to get them to deliver ROI, because purchasing a solution is a huge distance to actually generating the ROI of a solution. And recently I have been specializing in CDPs, in customer data platforms, which are a critical development in how we use our data, use the data that we own, our first party data, and how we navigate the space of cookie deletion, increased privacy, in order to keep giving our customers the experiences that they expect from digital, especially post-COVID. So what is a CDP? For those of you who may not be familiar with it, well, a CDP, you'll often hear it's an aggregated first, second, and third party customer data integration system. It enables you to take your internal data and your external data, unify that against your customers, and then you can do actionable things with it. You can create personalized experiences. You can do advertising suppression. You can create content that is relevant. They're really they turn data back into people, into customers via identity resolution. So we all have this massive amounts of data, but often we look at it through the lens of reporting or through the lens of KPIs, or through the lens of math. And what CDPs encourage us to do, or equip us to do, is to take that data and turn it back into a person with likes and preferences and goals and orientations towards our brand. So there are parts Swiss Army knife that allows marketers to content producers to better understand and engage with their customers. They're sort of part personal assistant for data. They help manage schedules, appointments and timings of communication. What they are not is a data warehouse. What they are not is a data lake. When you put data into a CDP, you should think of it more like a white glove curated capability. So I say it's a white glove curated capability. In North America, I say it's not a basement. So for Europe, I would say it's not an attic. You don't just push everything into it. You have to have very specific goals and objectives when using a CDP and creating this unified data view. So why do we need CDPs? If you've been hearing about CDPs, why are they the new trend? Is there an actual reason for them? Why have they gone up in the world? Because there's been a lot of CDP launches in the last 2 to 3 years. Telium's been around forever, but then Adobe came in with a new AEP system. Salesforce entered into the market, and there's several hundred, if not thousand, CDP and CDP adjacent MarTech products in the space right now. The main reason we see CDPs really coming to the fore in large organizations, especially in sensitive environments like pharma and financial, is this demise of cookies, the apocalypse of the digital data memory. That is a huge motivator for bringing in CDPs. We see that there's about anywhere between like 300 and 400 billion in global digital ad spend is going to be disrupted by the end of cookies. Also added to that, there's the increased technical and regulatory pressures being placed on how we use data, especially third-party data, is sort of compelling companies to rethink what data they already have ownership of, that first-party data, what they can use to leverage that data to better communicate and advocate to their customers and give their customers those digital experiences that they expect. So it also helps put a lens onto an organization around data governance and data privacy when you start bringing in a CDP, and speak to that a bit later. But it also helps businesses fulfill like customers' expectations of what, when they land on your site or they engage with your app or they engage with your loyalty system or they get a piece of direct mail, they expect it to be relevant for them. The days of looking at a pair of shoes online and having it follow you around are over. That is not an effective use of the way we would bring data together in the past. And CDPs give us the ability to connect that data to all our communication channels, be it call center, be it direct mail. It doesn't have to be digital, but predominantly digital, in real time, in a manner that is bringing the customer to us, having a brand experience that's reflective of them and not, frankly, creepy, which is kind of the old way of doing things, putting people in buckets and then giving a one-size-fits-all to that bucket. It really is, what does Sharon want from Gap? What does Sharon want from, you know, her bank? And making that effective. So really, the other big reason is personalization is becoming increasingly important. There is like about $800 billion available globally for companies that shift more to personalization. However, personalization is very tricky to do without, again, giving that creepiness vibe, that being spied on vibe. I want to be really clear. Customers across the world know they're radiating data. They know that they're giving data to companies. They are actually fine with it as long as you use that responsibly and respectfully. Where they get where the tension arises is where you're non-transparent, where you've received that data, especially through a loyalty program where it's very explicit that that's what's going on, and then you fail to deliver back an experience that's reflective of the information you have. So if for any brand really that possesses first party data, any kind of publishing assets or both, it really is time to reassess that how we are delivering that customer centric approach. It's becoming crucial, and companies that do it are going to succeed and companies that don't are going to fall behind. This has been relentlessly delivered by the industry, back to the industry, since COVID, when digital became a C-suite conversation. It's still not gaining as much traction as one would like. So to recap, we have a change in customers' high expectations. They want that sophisticated experience. We've got a proliferation of touch points. A customer does not experience your brand in just one, at the cash register, at the till, when they're paying their bills, it's everywhere. It's every part of their interactions, and they expect those interactions to be harmonious. If they have had some challenge with your brand and they've been on a call center and now they go in physically into a location, they do not want to have to tell that story all over again. They expect you to know, because they know you do know. They know that you have that data, you have that record, and that if that experience is disjointed or discontinuous, they see that as a failure on your part. And then we have obviously regulation, data privacy, GDPR, what's happening in California, Utah just recently brought out rules. Now, I do want to say, like, this privacy conversation has become very popular and very focused for everyone, and that's a great thing. But privacy regulation has been around since 1973. Like, Sweden passed privacy legislation in 73. And so it's just more that it's become sheer volume of information that's coming in, and the number of people within an organization of varying skill sets who have access to that data is what creates some of those dangers. But with the CDP or CDP type a solution, you can give that experience to the customer where it's coherent, where every time they interact with you, it's like they're picking up a conversation that they just finished. It's incredibly powerful, and it can create a great deal of efficiencies in content creation, in advertising creation, in how one deploys resources, in how people's frontline staff especially have their lives become easier because they have more information. So it's a really incredible tool that's on the market right now. So how does it do this cool stuff? That all sounds kind of great in theory, but how does it go about doing that? Well, basically, it's a real-time platform, so it's bringing in information in real time, especially digital information. It can ingest any sort of information. It's not just digital. It can bring in your call center data, your CRM data, all your digital touchpoint data, pretty much anything can be put into a CDP, which is why it's very important that we're thoughtful about what we put into it, because the temptation is to put everything in. It's capable of accepting all kinds of data. We have to be very precise in how we populate it. And then you've brought all your data in, and then it's sitting there, and then you can use that to connect to all your communication networks to say, so if Sharon joins this particular group that is interested in a coupon or something, or they've left, most common example is you've left something in your basket. Well, you'll get that email to say, hey, the thing you left in your basket is now down 10% or whatever. And that email is relevant to me. So rather than getting an email about general shoes or clothes or household goods that I'm interested in, I'm now getting that thing that you browsed, maybe put in your basket and abandoned, there's now an incentive for you to go back. And what's critical, and what's the most primary characteristic of any CDP, is it creates a persistent ID. So you will identify Sharon for all time in your CDP. And we do that by using multiple identifiers, cell phones, your emails, your multiple emails, and also other cookies, logging into other platforms such as like Facebook or other social media platforms. And then we're able to bring all those different identifiers that I may have, and the CDP is able to say, oh, these are all the same person, so that we're able to have a coherent, persistent identifier and be able to keep that record. So the map of that is basically you have your various different sources of data. You usually, typically, most CDPs, this is pretty much how they work regardless. They're brought into a kind of a raw zone, they're ingested, then we standardize them, we apply a nomenclature, we identify them, then they're all grouped together, we've got it activated and ready to go, we connect via APIs to all the various platforms and communication platforms, ad networks, we create audiences that can be as small as 1 or 2 people, as large as 10,000, and we're off to the races, right? So that's the process that CDPs are often articulated as. For me, the challenge there is you're missing the people, right? You're missing the people who actually do this. There's no such thing as the data fairy. Somebody has to identify this data. A person, a human being in your company has to activate these elements. There has to be some hands on keyboards. This isn't a magical system. In fact, it shouldn't be. It should be something that we're constantly being conscious of and using it as a tool. And so this is the first challenge when bringing any kind of CDP, or even if you talk about any sort of data gathering issue together, is we kind of leave out the people. It can be a very complex endeavor. It requires establishing robust data pipelines, ensuring really high quality data and integrity. And the reason for that is because when we set up these systems, we are creating triggers. We're saying when this action happens, Sharon left something in her basket and that basket price has gone down, then we're going to automatically trigger a email. Or when Sharon lands on this web page, we're going to personalize that web page for her in real time and personalize her journey through that website in real time. That's all fueled through the data. So if the data quality is questionable, or the data we chose to initiate that is questionable, then the system is diminished. So there is a degree to which human beings do have to be proactive in doing that. So that's why I tend to think of CDPs less about data, even though the data is it's a customer data platform, and more about human connection facilitated by technology. So essentially, we're marketers or content producers communicating with our customers or our audience, who are also people, through the medium of technology. So it's rather the technology is how we do that rather than the focus of what we're doing. And I think CDPs really epitomize this, because humans are messy and unpredictable. And like the CDP Institute, they do membership surveys every year, and they said that about 2/3 of companies, predominantly in the US, so it is a global survey, lack a CDP. And those that do have one, only about 1/3 of them have not seen a penny of value, or a euro, or a cent. So that, I think, is a lot to do with that human connection. So you need to incorporate the human factor, both your customers and your organization, to get success out of a CDP, or even if you're not at a CDP level yet, to get success out of your data at all. Otherwise, it's math, it is not analysis, it is not going to deliver ROI. So how do you do that? So you've purchased your CDP, or you've got your RFP out, or you have a solution that's like this, or is a CDP in your organization, and you're frustrated. It's not getting you where you need to be, or you're sort of stymied in your success. So the first thing, as a CDP leader or someone who's responsible for the CDP or Center of Excellence, is frankly, you got to be brave, or bold. But you really have to embrace the journey of taking risks. It is not going to be easy. Most CDPs can take, in best case scenario, 3 to 6 months to set up. And in other more complex organizations, or organizations earlier in the data maturity curve, it can be up to 2 years. So this is not something that is a ribbon cutting ceremony. It's not like you deploy your tags on Google or in Adobe and lots of yummy data pour in and you're good. There's going to be some setbacks, because through the CDP, you're going to uncover some data quality issues. You're going to uncover some organization or institutional resistance that will need to be overcome, and you're going to have to persist. It is going to be something that will need to take breaks, be aggressive at times, step back at times, and let other people catch up with you. So, of course, it's way easier to be brave when you've got executive sponsorship. And I've been working in digital data for a quarter of a century, and I have never read a book, attended a blog or a webinar that started with, so you don't have executive sponsorship. So I know this is not winning any Nobel Prizes for insight, but there will be these are significant investments, so there will be some executive sponsorship, at least initially, but you need to broaden your landscape. It's not one executive or leader or check writer that's going to follow you all the way through this process. You're going to have to bring in other teams. If it's coming through the CMO, you're going to have to interact with the CTO, or vice versa. You need to align the CDP to the overall company goals, because you're using the enterprise asset of the enterprise data. So it needs to reflect the enterprise goals. And there needs to be relentless, ongoing communication and re-education. You need to create this collaborative environment around the CDP and around data in general. And to do that, you're going to have goals. And the best way to do this is use cases. There are a number of different thoughts on this, but really what it boils down to is the tactics of what are you solving with the CDP? What are your use cases? So it could be as elaborate as, I want to use an app at a conference and be able to know everything that the conference person, the delegate, attended, and I want to know what they tweeted out, so I can bring that into the CDP so I can better understand them for my subsequent sales interactions. Or it could be as simple as, we want to have a personalized email and have that email go out to a designated group of people at a certain set of times. But to do that, you're going to have a data repository for your app data. You're going to need to be able to store that somewhere. You're going to need to have an identifier for your email personalization. You're going to need an email personalization system. Simply having MailChimp may not be sufficient. So we need to unpack what's behind that use case. You need to define success during the CDP activation, not just like at the end of it. You need to define what your KPIs are, how you're going to measure it, how you're going to measure it across divisions, because everybody will want to have a success story who's in favor of this process, and there will be other detractors who will want to have a negative story. You have to understand what your shared goals are, and then tracking and analyzing on an ongoing basis and being honest when things go wrong. The whole point of CDPs is to create this is like A/B testing on steroids, right? So the whole point is to go, this didn't work. We don't do that anymore. So through being brave, having that executive sponsorship and education, and having those clear goals, you start to activate in the culture of your organization the ability to say that failed, and for that to be a good thing that you identified that, so you don't waste time doing it another time. Okay, so you got your goals, you got your use cases, your executives are on board, you're starting to train them and keep that education going. You also need a roadmap, and a roadmap is distinct from a project plan. Of course, you're going to have project management tools and they're going to be deployed, but the CDP is a long road. So you're going to need, again, you're going to have your use cases to focus on that. You're going to need to be agile and adaptive. You're going to have to recognize there's going to be unexpected problems and challenges that arise. People will leave organizations, join organizations, new tools will be brought in that will need to be adapted. There will be a mishmash of ongoing everyday work that's happening. You need to have a very clear set of milestones of what you want to reach and why you have had to divert from those milestones, which is why having those constant communications with your executives is important and your stakeholders, and also why it's increasingly going to be important for you to be fairly brave, because you're going to have to deliver some news around what we thought an integration was going to look like and what the timelines for that are. A good example of this is actually GA4. Like GA4 threw a spanner in the wrench of a lot of organizations because they had to redeploy developer and digital analytics expertise to GA4 that would have not necessarily been considered tapped for a CDP integration, or you were going to tag the site with, say, a Telium TIQ tag in order to feed your Telium CDP. And now the question comes like, well, do we tag it for Universal or do we tag it for GA4? Well, obviously we have to tag it for GA4. Okay, well, what does that mean? And now we've kind of brought the GA4 conversation earlier. So that's an example of how things can derail the project plan, and why the roadmap, the goal there is digital data in the CDP. Okay, we thought we were going to do it this way. Now we have to do it this way. How does that impact the long-term approaches? And that brings us to data. So this is customer data platform. So clearly, without data, the whole thing doesn't exist. Data is the number one reason why CDPs stall, why the projects fail, or well, stall is a better word. They sputter. This is because, and this again, no Nobel Prizes for data analysis here, data is in silos. It's often scattered across various systems and departments with various decision rights owners. Decision rights owners are often absent. Integration efforts are very challenging because, for want of a better word, certain hacks have been introduced into the system over the years, and now we have to unpack them. The biggest challenge is that data relevance and quality is not where we thought it was. Existing data that you may have, first-party data, or even third-party data like digital data, may have been collected for completely different purposes that we're about to use it for in the CDP. It may not be relevant for the CDP use case once we actually get into the data. There may be inaccuracies in the data. We may not have had proper data governance practices. We may have a long list of customer identifiers, like an email or cell phone numbers, but when we reflect on the ones that maybe are 5 or 6 years old, the first question is, are they still relevant to the customer? But the first question ought to be, are we allowed to have these? Has anyone double checked how they came into the organization? Do we have consent to use them as identifiers? Do we need to go back out and get that consent? Do we need to delete all this data because in retrospect, now that we look at it, we shouldn't have been storing it this way? So there's a lot of time and effort that has to go into the data identification. And again, you're going to be bringing in your data teams, your data scientists who have like full-time day jobs to start uncovering what that is. The positive of this is it does help focus our minds on our CDP is a curated experience, and we only put in data that we need rather than a data lake. So, you know, that can help incentivize us to be more focused on what data we want to really go this deep on. So that's a glass half full approach, but we still have to put in that time and effort for data identification. The mature cross-functioning data governance will need to be at least starting to stand that up, and we need to get those collaborative efforts. Other examples, again, simple examples of if you look at if you take something like a Ford F-150 is a very popular car in the US, and that sounds like very simple, but what if somebody puts it in the database, one database is F space 150 and another database is F dash 150 and another database is F-150 and the other database is Ford F-150. They're all the same thing. The computer doesn't know that unless you tell them. So you may have like way back at the beginning data entry things that have been compounded sometimes for decades, and we need to unpack all that. So that can take considerable time. The next big considerable thing is integration. So here's where we're bringing data, taking the pipes. So the first thing is the things that flow through the pipes is the data. Now we're taking the pipe itself and connecting it to the CDP. So that could be your Salesforce, it could be your Google Analytics, could be your any customer relationship management, your call center data. Maybe you're uploading files on ingesting in that kind of format, maybe on a quarterly or a monthly basis. And to do that, we have to engage our IT folk and often our partners. And that can take considerable amount of time. It is stunning that even today in 2023, when we look at something like connecting your CDP to LinkedIn, it turns out we don't have a LinkedIn account for the organization. What we have is one person who they have one password and one email, or you might have like sort of CDP, like Publicis Sapient. This would never happen in Publicis Sapient, but you would have like a Publicis Sapient at publicsapient.com is the email address that they're using, some like non-shared thing. And now we need to actually formalize that, and we have to track down who that person is, and no one knows who that person is. So when I mean integration, it can be really, really those big boy things of like major MarTech and major data lakes connecting to the CDP, but it can also be very simple things like connecting the CDP back out to your email, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your marketing tech, especially if you're working with partners or you've worked with partners who have since stepped back and you have a new partner. That can take much longer than we all think it's going to. This is one of those eat less, work out more pieces of advice. It's very simple to say, much more challenging to do. And then, so that was I kind of blew through that. So just to take a deep breath and think again, CDPs, incredibly powerful, give you the authority to use your own data that you have control on, decoupled from your third-party environments, separate from Facebook, separate from Twitter, separate from the Google ecosystem. Not that those are bad necessarily, but you're handing your reputation over to other groups. Now you own it completely yourself. You're using your own data that nobody else has once you've established that you're entitled to use it. So that gives you that competitive advantage. And now you can create those legitimately personalized experiences on any platform, and or create a coherent narrative with your customer regardless of how their touch points are. And that allows, and then that feeds all back in and you get this sort of virtuous circle. It is not easy. You are going to have to build a ton of bridges. You're going to have to build bridges, yes, within the system, and you're building a bridge from yourself to your customer. But most importantly, you've got to build bridges within your organization. This is an enterprise level tool that you are going to get full ROI on if it's a shared resource that we're all using. So you're going to have to be super brave. You're going to have that roadmap that will need to be changed. You're going to have to integrate your CDP with other data sources and how your inputs and your outputs. You have to be absolutely clear-eyed in what data you want to bring into the CDP and build into your roadmap. Those conversations around governance, residency, data quality, consistency of data quality practice going forward that might go ripple out way beyond the CDP. Clear goals and objectives so that when the roadmap is disrupted, we can keep that goal in mind and keep focused on it, and have those executive sponsors that are maybe more widely dispersed, more widely brought in than the simple person who originally paid for or invested in the CDP. You may have multiple stakeholders and executives as the process moves forward, and they're going to need to be constantly kept informed. So you're really looking at that change management component being very critical. You do need quick wins, because if you tell an executive this is going to take 18 months, they will naturally be very skeptical. So start small, find those quick wins, use them to test your theories, small amounts of data first, get that working, and then we can scale up from that. And then really at the end of the day, if you've no clean data and you're not confident in your rights around using that data, and you haven't got a plan for how to keep compliant with regulations in your region, both now and in the future, you're not going to have a CDP. It's going to be something of a moot point. So I hope that was a helpful way to think about CDPs, and I'd love to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Sharon. I'm just seeing if people have got questions in the chat. I don't know if you've got on the last slide, if you had your contact details, if you want to share that just so people can sort of photograph that or send you a direct message. Oh, perfect, your LinkedIn.
Drop my LinkedIn into the chat. Always very happy to connect with fellow data nerds. I mean, that's a compliment,
great, yeah.
guys.
Yeah, and I think it's good to kind of think about it from a kind of a strategic kind of angle. I remember I was talking a little while ago to the kind of chief analyst at I think it was Puma in Europe, and they had to do kind of almost like internal advocacy, and they actually used to wear their own little T-shirt saying analytics team, and they used to kind of in the lunchroom they used to sit in the same place, and it was kind of just to kind of make it seem like it's cool and interesting, and lots of good things kind of happening there.
FOMO is a great motivator. So
Yeah,
that's why
exactly.
those start small. If you have a small team or a group that's leaning in and supporting you or is curious, if you can create that, doesn't have to change the world. Like it can be a low risk, modest reward, but then you're able to create those moments of success, and you will get other teams to go, I'd like that, I'd like to do that. So that's why those use cases are critical and that roadmap is critical, yet one needs to be malleable for when an opportunity arises to sell it in, because if people don't adopt the CDP, even the most beautifully set up CDP will just sit as a monument to what could have been. And these are significant investments. So we do need to see that return on that investment, and be able to articulate it and deliver upon it. So yes, workshops, constant communication, and you'll live and breathe it all day, every day. And there's so many other versions of it. Like you'll have one advocate for a Salesforce approach, or an advocate for an Adobe approach, or an advocate for a Telium approach. None of those are wrong. It is more, what is the right approach for your organization? today. And one of my main things that keep me up at night is how do I enable my clients to make decisions today that they will not regret in a year? That, oh, in retrospect, if we had. So you're kind of trying to build a plane as you take off. That's why it's a good idea to not to be too self-serving, but it is a good idea to have a partner on board, at least initially, as scaffolding to try and get you up and running quickly.
Yeah, I mean, some of those setups can be quite complicated. I know um, in the past looked at like a segment.io setup and their kind of CMP system, and there's a lot of kind of moving pieces within it. And it's one of those ones that if you get it wrong, then the cost of kind of doing it again is, you know, really
Yeah, and
ridiculous. So
it's soul crushing as well, because you've put in all that work, and that it is one of the biggest challenges with. I mean, I'm a huge Adobe fan, but one of the biggest challenges with AEP is if there isn't a lot of wiggle room for error. Where I think something like Tedium does allow you to start small and build out, but sometimes that's not fast enough for people, or the challenge is it's yet another MarTech tool, it's another contract. And so sometimes people like it all in the one ecosystem. So other organizations prefer to have it spread out. Um, it isn't a one size fits all. That's the whole point of CDPs, is that we have personalization.
yes, yeah, there's an irony there. Yeah, thank you again for doing that. And if people want to submit the speaker feedback sort of form, they'll get access to your slides, and we can relay any
Of
questions from
course.
that.